Hey everyone. Yeah, it's about 6 in the morning on this Sunday. Thankfully, I don't work. I am going to be going to church in about 4 hours. Or getting ready to go to church. But I thought I'd come on here and for 2017, the first or the second Sunday of 2017, I thought I'd do something that I've been trying to do at least for the past couple of days. Whether it's via this or via either via like either it's via my digital recorder or my laptop or my Samsung Galaxy, easy for me to say. I thought I'd kind of come out and explain something to people. Just some sonic things to get off my chest here at the beginning of 2017. Recently, I think, if I look here, posted on Christmas Day and then posted on the 3rd of this year, I talked about basically the fact that it's been 5 years. Last month in December was the beginning, in a sense, in 2011, and this month begins the full throttle, full length run of the Mecha Sally arc back in 2012. So literally 5 years. But I have people questioning and wondering why people like me come out and talk about it or reminisce about it or say this was the reason for it and this shouldn't have been. And the reason we talk about it is mostly the fact that here was a story arc that potentially could have been good, whether we liked what they did with Sally or we didn't. And it failed to succeed, in many people's eyes. I'm not saying that a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people did. Mixed fan 8643, he liked it. And there are others that liked it. But the thing is, depending on who you are and maybe what generation you grew up in, might show favoritism or disdain towards it. But here's the thing. For a lot of us longtime fans. You see, we saw Sally get roboticized once in the comics, and that was for one issue, for one main story. And she got restored within that same story. Now, there's no doubt that some of us that didn't like what happened to her in the Mecha Sally arc or the way her mecha self was portrayed and all that. We're not saying that we wouldn't tolerate maybe an issue or 2 or 3 of her roboticized, or even 4. We wouldn't tolerate that. Because we would. Knowing if by the 3rd or 4th issue she's restored, then fine. We have no problem with that. But when you constantly drag it on for as long as they did, and you constantly, how do I put this? You constantly, just throw in filler after filler after filler of the same thing going on and on and on, especially midpoint, if you will, almost in the arc. It's like, what else do you have up your sleeve? What else can you provide? I mean, it's like I said, it's no wonder there were a lot of fans the ones that disdained the Mecha Sally portion of the Mecha Sally arc. Why there were a lot of fans that when they look back at the story arc itself, even including me, why why a lot of us show favoritism towards the team fighter portion or the secret freedom fighters portion. Because in a sense, you were doing more than just repetitive story work. And I think that's what showed that favoritism towards that part of it instead of the Mecha Sally portion, which it should have been the main focus of. And that's not all. That's not all. I mean, you take a look at the fact that how do I put this? You take a look at the fact that a lot of us didn't like how Sally was, even in her mecha form, was acting. Because for a lot of us, for about 20 years at that time, going on 20 years, this was not Sally. This wasn't. And I think what really upset a lot of people is, depending on how you look at it, or how they looked at it, I think what upset a lot of people, depending on how they looked at it, was mainly the fact that on one side of that fandom that didn't like the Mecha Sally arc, one of the reasons they didn't like it was a lot of them felt that just by looking at that final page, I think it was 231 or something like that, and you have Eggman holding a blowtorch up to Sally's face in her mecha form. A lot of people didn't like what became of that an issue or two later. Why? Because even though I strongly, and I pointed this out, I strongly believe that all he did was weld weaponized armor onto her, with maybe a few exceptions like the head cannon, or like implanting the cannon in her head. I'm still firmly believe that she had weaponized armor welded onto her. It makes a lot of sense, if you will. It does. But when you look at it from this side of the fandom, this side of the fandom doesn't believe that. This side of the fandom that probably didn't like the arc, maybe saw potential and all that, maybe enjoyed parts of the arc, now that I think about it as well, the one thing that really turned them off about it is the fact that to them, even though Ian Flynn won't come out and say it, to them, off panel, he had Eggman gut Sally. Basically, he had her, in their minds, off panel, he had the character of Eggman use that blowtorch to open Sally up, take her apart, just leave her head, whatever, or modify her head a little bit, or whatever, however you look at it, and just gut her and then do what he did to her. I mean, even LTH, Lewis the Hedgehog, points this out. And it's like, to a lot of them, because of what the result was, is the reason we got the Sally we have now in the new Soft Retcon rebooted continuation of the story, or of the comic. To them, that shouldn't have been. This shouldn't be a reason. Now again, I'm one of those fans that firmly believes he probably just put he welded or connected weaponized armor onto her already roboticized body, and the only, like I said, connection he probably put in there was, or the only addition he put onto her was possibly the head cannon, and that was about it. Maybe the silver plates, and that was about it. But to me, I don't think he gutted her. But just because myself and several others believe that, there's a whole other portion of that fan base, that long-time fan base, that doesn't believe that. They don't believe he put that Ian had off panel, had Eggman put welded armor onto Sally. welded weaponized armor onto Sally. A lot of them believe she was gutted. And that, in a sense, is what made a lot of people pissed off about that arc 5 years ago, and even to this day. Because it's the fact of why. Why would you have a character? I mean, okay, I understand, and a lot of us understand, that you're trying to make a villain threatening. You're trying to make him so threatening and psychotic that possibly down the line you're going to have to write something up that even with Sega's permission, or even without, you're going to have to take that character and probably bump him off for a while. You know, I get that. I can understand you want to build him up to that point, or at least have him defeated so much to the point that he has to rebuild from scratch. You know, so there's a lot of us that can understand you want to make a villain threatening and beyond, just beyond mercy and all that. So I get that. I get that. But even though you're trying to make him threatening and everything, a lot of people felt that in their eyes, gutting Sally, like they believe, is going a little over the top. Because you see, here's the one thing about fandoms. It doesn't matter if it's Sonic or whatever. There's a lot of long-time hardcore fans, or at least a lot of long-time dedicated fans, that will analyze every little detail on panel, off panel, on screen, off screen, and come to their own conclusion. So there's a lot of fans that believe by analyzing and delving deeper into the arc itself off panel that Ian had Eggman take Sally apart. Even though, like I said, Ian Flynn has not come out and said anything like that. Now, depending on what happens with Lost Hedgehog Tales, that's a different story in itself. But, Ian Flynn never really came out just yet and admitted it. But here's another thing that really irks me a little bit. And I think some fans that, were, like I said, split down the middle about the arc, some liking it, some didn't. I'm sure there are some out there that would agree that when the whole... Excuse me, that was my stomach. There's a lot of fans that... there's a lot of fans that might agree with me that when the first red flag went up about the whole behind-the-scenes issue with Penders and Archie Comics and Sega, when that red flag first went up, I think to a lot of us, that's when maybe Ian Flynn, because you can't honestly tell me that Ian, Tracy, and whoever else was working on the arc, maybe Evan Stanley just joined, I don't know. But you can't tell me that neither one of them knew about what was going to happen. That neither one of them had an idea or had some kind of hint given to them about what was going to go down. Because let's say you're Tracy Yardlin and you're told, hey, I want you to do the cover for the first part of the endangered species plot of the story arc. And on the bottom right hand corner of that first part you have Amy Rose and Julie Sue standing back to back to each other, and then all of a sudden when that cover comes out later on, again, it's edited, it's altered, and Julie Sue is gone. That to me, if I'm Ian Flynn and anybody else, if I probably got the note saying, hey, you got to heck, if I'm Tracy Yardlin and I did that cover, I'm not saying he did, but if I'm the one that got that note saying, hey, you got to redo this cover, you got to remove Julie Sue, that to me should have been a red flag. That to me should have been a real big, well, not much of a major red flag just yet, but that should have been a red flag that something was up. That should have told me something. That should have also told something to Ian Flynn, because I'm sure he got notes from above saying, hey, you got to change this, you got to change that, you got to take this character out, you got to take that character out. I'm sure that should have been a red flag. egg when he started getting notes about that. Heck, remember he did the part of the story arc had them go into the Wolfpack Nation. Okay, it had them go into the Wolfpack Nation, and originally in this story arc, they were supposed to encounter and meet up with an undercover Hershey the cat, or Hershey St. John. They were supposed to meet up with her. She was supposed to help them out, but that didn't happen because of the behind-the-scenes lawsuit that, caused all these last-minute editorial changes that I'm sure Ian Flynn, Tracy Yardley, and anybody else working on the comic did not like. And then on top of that, you have Sega come down, and Sega, Archie Comics, whoever, come down and tell them, oh, by the way, 242 is mainly going to be used as an advertisement for the Olympic Games of 2012, but also be used as an advertisement to slowly tie into the Mario Sonic Olympic game, Olympic video game. It's like, all this to me, if I was in Ian Flynn's shoes, should have been a red flag. It should have been. And if I was Ian Flynn, to me, that should have opened my eyes and made me realize, okay, I'm this far into the arc, and now I got to dedicate what would have been another portion of the arc to keep it flowing, 242, to nothing more than a tie-in to the Olympics and the Mario Sonic Olympic game, or Olympic video game at the time. So how am I going to continue it, with the exception of having this story that would have been the side arc, or been the side story in the issue? And if I was, and here's the thing that, a lot of people, some people questioned. They said, well, how could Ian Flynn make this possible? Well, I came out one time, through this, in the update video, and I said basically that if I was Ian Flynn, I would have gone to Sega, I would have gone to Archie, I would have gone to the Sega representatives, I would have gone to the head people at Archie, and I would have said, look, obviously the Mecha Sally arc is not going to go as planned. Why not let me use 242's backup story as a commentary, through the characters themselves, to tell the fans that the Mecha Sally story arc cannot continue due to reasons, due to behind the scenes reasons, or whatever choice of words he would use. Just telling us, just through the characters in a sense, tell us that it can't be done. It can't be continued due to the behind the scenes issues, and any plans that he had have been altered, have been thrown out because, or been shelved indefinitely because of those behind the scenes issues. Why couldn't he ask him to do something like that with 242 and then use 43, 243, 244, and 245 and 246 as fillers, if you will? Maybe build up to the crossover with Mega Man with those. Why couldn't he just do that? I'm just curious. I'm just curious, because it would have made more sense. You wouldn't have to go through all this. He wouldn't have had to go through all this at all. And there's a lot of fans out there that would have understood. Even if he came out on his Bumble King website and said, right on the main page, said, look, breaking news, or I got some important news to tell you about the Mecha Sally arc, and explain why maybe it can't continue. Or maybe explain why the changes are happening. Do something that would at least put many fans that were actually okay with the arc, and some that were mixed about the arc, and some that disdain the arc, kind of put their minds at ease, going like, wait a minute, so you build up this whole story arc that's supposed to climax or conclude in some way with 250, and now you can't do it because, and now you can't finish it the way you want to because all this is coming down, all this is happening. So so it's like, he couldn't just explain to people